How in the F did that happen?
Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. I'm here with my new friend, Dan Edwards. We were actually introduced by a previous guest that we had on, Sean Liscombe, who wrote an awesome book series called The Ranch. Very post-apocalyptic, 6 or 7 books. I blazed through all of them in like a month and a half. One of my new favorite series. And when I was interviewing Sean, he's like, no, man, you got to talk to the man. You got to talk to Dan Edwards. He actually owns the company, Creative Text Publishing. They've published over 500 books in the cowboy genre, the science fiction genre, a lot of post-apocalyptic books. So I've got my reading list on Audible all tapped out on Creative Text Publishing properties. And then I just found out that he wrote an awesome book years ago on Billy the Kid, the story of Billy the Kid. Did he die? Did he not die? Did the man that went for a pardon in front of the governor of New Mexico, was that really Billy the Kid? And so first of all, congratulations on the book, which is like a decade ago. I hear that that's turning into possibly a documentary or something like that. Congratulations on the success of the business. Congratulations on finding Sean Liscombe, because he was just some EMT who's like, let me write a book for fun for my family. And it turned into a awesome, best-selling, I can't remember, it was 6 or 7 part series. I read all of them or listened to all of them on Audible. And it just seems like you've got a really great factory of cool people writing books there. So what did I miss in the 60-second Reader's Digest? Where do you live? What does your family look like? And how the hell did you get into publishing books?
Well, first, I thank you so much for having me on. And we're very fortunate. We've got an amazing stable of authors that write professionally. These are guys that some of which have quit their jobs to do this full time, and the readers love them, and I love them, and I'm very thankful for that. So I'm from Florida. Creative Text is in Pennsylvania. We lived in PA for many, many, many years. I was a corporate guy, worked for the Coca-Cola Company. I worked for Dunkin Brands. If you ever had a wake up wrap at Dunkin Donuts, I invented the wake up wrap back in 2007.
Nice.
So as a restaurant development guy, franchise guy. And so we moved, but I was also in seminary, strangely enough. So That was going to be my focus, was to be a Baptist preacher, and ended up becoming a pro hockey chaplain for the Philadelphia Flyers, pro hockey for 10 years.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been an interesting road.
Yeah. You were a chaplain in the NHL?
Yes.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, it is. It's so all the professional sports, I believe all of them have mandatory chapel. So my buddy actually runs baseball chapel, Gio Lorena. And so those are all mandated by the players union. Hockey is the only one that's not. So it's on a team by team basis. I think at the time I was doing it, we had 23 of 30 NHL teams. And at the time I was head of development for Tim Hortons, which is an iconic Canadian brand. And so my work and my, ministry, it was a volunteer ministry, so I wasn't paid. But I had a lot of good relationships, not just with, the players and the coaches and that, but also team owners and things because of the Tim Hortons relationship. So it's funny because the guys would see me, and a lot of them, we're not mandatory and not every team participates. And what's funny is the Flyers did not participate, but matter of fact, I have a team pass with my name on it right here.
Amazing.
So although they didn't officially participate in Hockey Ministries, and this was under the auspices of Hockey Ministries International, I would come in and they'd say, we don't want those Hockey Ministry guys. And I said, no, I'm a Hockey Ministry guy. And they'd say, oh, you're fine. I literally had a team pass. I had all access. And they said, oh, we don't let me know if those Christian guys come around. It's like that. I'm that guy. So it was very bizarre, but it was great. I knew Ed Snyder pretty well. Peter Luco, the CEO of the Flyers, and John Paddock is a real good friend of mine. He was the assistant GM back in the day. So anyway, so I did that until 2015. But all that to say, I've been in Pennsylvania for a really long time, but I'm from Florida. So 3 or 4 years ago, we bought a house outside of Key West. So that's my main home, and then we come up to Philly suburbs a little bit. My daughter's still here, so we come back and forth.
And all right, so how does that happen, like man of the cloth, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to write a book on Billy the Kid and open a publishing company? I feel like there's a really weird career shift happened somewhere about 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe you could tell me, because I don't know how these things happen. you know, I dropped out of high school. I had a 1.1 average, and ended up getting a GED, going to Bible college, going to graduate school to get my master's degree. And again, was just focused on being a Baptist preacher, but had to pay for college. You know, I put myself through school. So I graduated. I think I had 40 grand in student loans, which is nothing today, but back in the day, that was quite a bit.
A lot of money, yeah.
And then I had 25 grand in credit card debt, and I was making 25,000 a year as a McDonald's restaurant manager. So, you know, the economics of that were not great. So as much as I wanted to devote myself to, you know, ministry, I really need to pay the people back that had loaned me money.
Right.
And so, so I really felt like I was failing at school, and I was failing. You know, you're supposed to get through seminary. This is a pretty robust program, not to bore you to death, but it's a 96 hours master's. So you can get a master's in 30 credits. So this is equivalent to 3 masters, it's just shy of a doctorate. So I was going for my master's of divinity. You have to take Greek, Hebrew, all that stuff. And
wow.
I was supposed to get it in 3 or 4 years. It took me 9. And so about 3 years in, when I saw I wasn't blowing through it, and I was failing kind of in every area of my life, I felt like, I said, I got to focus on my job, man. I gotta like really try to like take my career seriously and not just my education. And when I started focusing on my job, I started doing really well, and I started getting promoted, started getting opportunities, and then started making good money. And then, you know, I didn't want to, you know, then you have the internal conflict. Like, am I here to help people, or am I here to make a fortune?
Right.
And I didn't want to give up my calling. And strangely enough, in college, I had waited on some Toronto Maple Leafs players as a customer. You know, I was their waiter, and I'd never been to a hockey game, didn't know anything about hockey. And the one guy, his wife is Madeline Smith, who is a big actress. She kind of toned it back because she was going to raise her family, but she was huge in the 80s. She was on the cover of TV Guide. She was in All of Me with Steve Martin. She was in The Super with Joe Pesci. She's a leading lady. And she was in Urban Cowboy with John Travolta. And so somebody recognized her. Let me know if I'm boring you.
No, go there.
So I recognized her, and I had been talking to these guys for like 2 hours. Like it was like the couple, there's 2 couples, and it was like the people you want to hurry up and leave because you got to clean up, you know, because we're closed now. And but they were having a great old time. And somebody recognized the actress, and I knew her name was Madeline, but I didn't know if she was really pretty. Right. And I said, "Are you an actress?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Come on, you're not an actress." And she goes, "No, I really am." And I said, "What movies have you been in?" And she says, "You want my resume?" And I said, "Yeah, kind of. I want to know who you are." So she goes, "Well, I was in this movie, that movie." And I said, I think I've heard those. Oh, she's in Funny Farm with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, amazing
where they
movie.
moved to Redbud. So anyway, then I come back with their desserts, and she goes, I go, "What do you guys do? You just like follow her around and make movies and stuff?" And they're like, "No, we have jobs. We're not unemployed." And she goes, "They're pro hockey players." And I said, "Come on, you're not pro hockey players." And they go, "Yeah." And I said, "Who do you play for?" They said, "Toronto Maple Leafs." I said, "That's the dumbest name I've ever heard. Like, you know, you got like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got the Dallas Cowboys, like a Maple Leaf. Like, seriously.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, you guys in Canada name your sports after freaking Maple Leaf? What is that? And long story short, they thought that was hilarious. They were in town to play the Lightning, and they said, "You got to come to the game on Tuesday." So they gave me tickets. And, you know, day one, my first hockey game, I'm back in the locker room with the players and everything. I didn't know who anybody was and didn't care. And that's probably why they liked me, because I was like making fun of them and stuff.
You weren't like a fanboy.
No, I actually hated it. I hated the sport at the time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, long story short, and that was 1993, 2005. Mark Osborne is the guy. He played for the Rangers, played for the Leafs. He's a scout for the Kings right now. He's actually my best friend at the moment. We'll see how things go, but he's my best friend, one of my best friends. And he calls me and says, "Hey, would you be willing to help us out? You know, we need a chapel leader for the Phantoms, the American Hockey League Phantoms. And would you, you know, they're in the same building as the Flyers and Voorhees there used to be." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I started volunteering for them in 2005. And then in 2008, they sold the team to Jim and Rob Brooks, who are friends of mine now. And they moved it to Glen Falls, New York. And then they said, "Would you take the Flyers?" So from 2008 to 2015, I had the Flyers. Those are some good times. Yeah. It was a volunteer thing. You know, I spent a lot of time running around, you know.
So I want to go back to something you said, because I think this is the dichotomy that a lot of people have in our mind, and we think it's an either or, but why can't it be an and? You said, hey, I was really perplexed or confused, whatever you said, whether to help people or make a lot of money. And why is it in America, like somebody like yourself who has a business background and a master's in divinity and was a chaplain, why do we have in America this hang up over like, you can either help people or you can make a lot of money, but for some reason we never frame it as like, you can do both. You can make a mountain of money and help a ton of people. Why? You said it kind of as a throwaway line, but I really think most Americans feel that way.
Yeah, I can just speak for me personally. I never wanted to make money off of ministry. Like it's philosophically, number one, if you're successful, they're always going to say that's why you did it. Right. So like, you know what I mean? Like you can't win that one, whether it's true or not. So me personally, I thought, let's keep that separate. And maybe it's wrong. I'm not saying everybody should do that.
Right.
I literally have photos of me with Sidney Crosby, like everybody in the hockey world. But I don't have a single photo with a Philadelphia Flyer. And I don't do that. I'm not there to take, I'm there to give. We'd go to dinner. Sometimes I'd pay. These guys are making millions of dollars and I was making, under $100,000, and I'm paying, for dinner at these really expensive places, but I'm there to give, And so for me, it was a principle thing. I don't think there's anything wrong. And obviously since then I've done okay. So, I don't know. I don't mind making a bunch of money. I think the Lord gifts people with the opportunity to do that. Me personally, I didn't want to make it off of him. I wanted to make it some other way. I don't publish Christian books,
Oh, interesting.
I mean, nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Just
not for you.
I don't want to make a mistake on that stuff. If I make a mistake, if you and I are talking, I give you really bad advice. Because the players would come up to me and say all kinds of interesting things, as you would imagine.
Right.
Asking me if their lifestyle, was appropriate or not. And I'd say, buddy, I'm a sinner. That's why I need a savior. Like, you want to know what I think about the girl you're dating, who's a supermodel, who, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Or do you want to know what the Bible says? Because I want to be clear about that. I think, that person's beautiful. And I think that, whatever, but that's really not important, is it? Like, I'm here to tell you what the Bible says about it. So if you want to know that, I'm happy to tell you about that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but they would always try to catch you, They'd be like, hey, we got a limo outside. Let's go to the strip club. It's like, I'm your chapel leader, dude. I can't go. I can go. But what are you going to think about, my message if I go?
Right.
So, I don't need to do that stuff. I don't want to do that stuff. But, we're human beings. So like, to think I don't get mad at work and upset, or, I'm not, I'm a sinner. That's why I need a savior. But, we can be humble and we can try to, do what we think the Lord wants us to do and try to help other people and things like that. But yeah, the money motive for me was just always something that bothered me, I guess.
Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Yeah. So of course, all of this experience clearly leads you to writing a book about Billy the Kid. I mean, that makes total sense. How in the F did that happen?
So let me think about how to say this. I had a relative that I was helping financially, and I was frustrated that this relative seemed to only want to take money and not better themselves. So I was trying to create an environment for them where they would have, what's holding you back? Well, I don't have transportation. Okay, I'm going to buy you a vehicle. So I buy them a vehicle. Now what? Well, I don't have contact lenses. They're expired. Okay, I'm going to buy you so, thousands of dollars later,
right?
There's still no personal responsibility making themselves, sustainable, right? Because if I help you make money, then we both have money, right? Instead of me just giving you mine. Yeah. And so,
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah, I think everybody can relate. So then it's like, well, the only reason I'm not working is because I'm going to write a book. And I said, nobody wants to read your book. Okay. You shouldn't write books. Nobody wants to read your book. It's like, and nobody's going to publish it. No, number one, even if people want to read it. No, you can self-publish on Amazon. And I thought, you can't self-publish on Amazon. That's always my first answer to everything. Oh, you can't do that. And I looked into it and you could. Now this is back, early 2014, I guess. And I said, you could. So I actually was exploring it to help them remove the excuse so that they would, because they were saying, oh, it's so complicated. If you don't do it exactly right, they'll reject it, whatever. So I went through the process and I published an old Frontier Doctor's Medical Guide, which was just something I rebranded and added some new content and put it out. It became the #1 book in health and wellness overnight. And it sold, I think it was 1,400 copies the first day.
What?
Yeah. And I said, oh my God, I'm a genius, but I'm also an idiot because this thing is completely not formatted correctly. It's really embarrassing. It's got my name on the cover. Like, I need to get this thing off of Amazon as fast as I got it up. So I pulled it down and then I thought, well, maybe you could actually make money at this. And I was interested in the story about this guy who claimed to be Billy the Kid. And I really was just going to kind of summarize the key findings and just repackage it kind of thing.
Okay.
But then, my seminary, they teach you hermeneutics, the study of how to interpret text. They teach you research methods. They teach you a lot of very technical ways of doing research. And as I began to search, I found things like that the first newspaper article describing the shooting of Billy the Kid said that the body looked like a dead Mexican with a beard. And Brushy Bill Roberts in 1950 said they didn't kill me. They killed my half Mexican buddy who kind of looked like me, but he was Mexican and he had a beard. So I picked up on that and said, wait a minute, who would know that? This is an obscure newspaper article that even the historians had missed that I found. It was the first article, I think it was July 23rd, 1881, of the shooting of Billy the Kid. And it says that he had disguised himself as a Mexican and had grown a beard. Well, Billy the Kid didn't have any facial hair at the time. So anyway, long story short, that was just one of the things that kind of motivated me because I found things that professional historians that do this for a living had missed, and I was like, how do you guys take your paychecks from the universities you work for if you can't find these basic things? And then I started looking at all the things that people said, because there's a whole list of things that people say over and over about this guy. And if you know anything about him, you've heard some of them. He was too young. He didn't look like him at all. DNA
By the way,
proof.
Everything I know about Billy the Kid came from Young Guns 1 and Young Guns 2.
Okay, perfect. You're in good shape. You know more than 90% of the historians in that case. Although I'm not dogging historians. Actually, I have some dear friends that are historians, and they're very good. There's a thing called peer review.
Right.
And peer review means, you review each other's stuff. And I think in that process, the circular reasoning really is antagonistic to new ideas and new thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind it unless there's intellectual dishonesty. Right. And within any community, there's an element of intellectual dishonesty.
For sure.
And that is definitely the case in regards to this guy, Brushy Bill Roberts. So the 10 arguments that are regurgitated over and over, I found to be without substance. And I also found to be intellectually dishonest because they weren't true.
So tell us the story. Tell us the story of this guy that came forward as Billy the Kid, because most people don't know this story.
Yeah. So first, it's funny because most people don't even know who Billy the Kid is. So Billy the Kid was a teenage outlaw in the American West. And think about 1870, 1880. So after the Civil War in 1865 ends, you had a new administration coming in and literally changing wholesale the Southern way of life. Okay. They called them carpetbaggers. So they came in and this is the way it's going to be. And if you don't like it, tough, you lost, whatever. A lot of people said, I'm out of here. Okay. They went west.
Right. Because this was more than just ending slavery. This was you're gonna live life the way that we live up in the North because slavery is over. You're an ignorant peasant or farm owner or slave owner. And not only are you going to get rid of your slaves, which was obviously morally just, but now you're going to live like we live, dress like we dress, wear our newspaper or read our newspapers. Like they tried to change the entire culture of the South, right?
It was, they tried to, it was a very complex time, mm-hmm. Rather than heal and allow, this is a very complex thing, but my understanding is rather than kind of allow them to heal, they conquered, mm-hmm. To a degree. And now there's a lot of Confederate monuments and things like that, but there was a lot of the carpetbagging stuff. And anyway, you had people from the North and the South going west, some for a profit motive. There was the gold rushes and things like that, heading to California and all that. But you had a real hodgepodge of people. Plus, there was not a lot of law early on, and it was very freewheeling. So if you're a big cattle guy, and you had 20, 30 cowboys riding for you, I mean, you were the law. I mean, one little measly town sheriff, he's not going to do anything. I mean, sheriffs were killed fairly routinely, right, and deputies were killed fairly routinely. There's a lot of vigilantism. Like, it was just a very different world. So, you had a lot of very dangerous men and people going west. And in the middle of this is this 17-year-old kid, 5'6", 150 pounds, who's the baddest guy of anybody. And he lived among these rough and ready people and dominated. I mean, he was the scariest one, fastest on the draw, all that stuff. So this is Billy the Kid, supposedly, who was a desperado in New Mexico. He's in the Lincoln County War, which is the cattlemen eventually start going after each other, and all their cowboys are killing each other. So anyway, they killed Billy the Kid's boss, John Tunstall, and Judge Wilson deputized as constables some of his cowhands and made them the regulators. And then they went out to round up the people that killed his boss. And then they ended up killing them. And it was just a mess. So finally, the president of the United States sent in Lew Wallace, who was a Civil War general, the guy who wrote Ben-Hur, to kind of clean up the territory because it was so corrupt and bad. So long story short, he had promised.
Hold on. The guy who was hired to hunt down the regulators in New Mexico and I guess into Arizona and Texas and whatnot, the guy who was hired to do that was a Civil War general who wrote the book Ben-Hur?
Yeah, so not exactly. The governor, so they removed Governor Axtell, okay, and they put Ulysses S. Grant, the president, put in Lew Wallace, who was a Civil War general who wrote Ben-Hur.
Wow, I love Ben-Hur. Side note.
Yeah. Yeah. So he comes in and is like, look, amnesty, okay? Everybody, you're all pardoned, okay? Except for Billy the Kid. He's the only one that we're not going to give a pardon to. And they met privately, and the governor said the bad guys in Lincoln had killed this lawyer, Huston Chapman, who was a lawyer for Alexander McSween's wife. They had killed Alexander McSween, who was a good guy, peace-loving guy, Christian guy. And they shot him down. And then I'm not telling the story right. Let me back up. So the Lincoln County War culminates in this Battle of Lincoln, okay, where it's Billy the Kid's people and the Murphy Dolan faction. They had their people, and they were the corrupt ones. They were in cahoots with Governor Axtell and the Santa Fe Ring, which is all these district attorneys and crooked politicians. So Billy the Kid's team is basically whooping them, okay? They're winning the war. And then the U.S. Army comes in with Gatling guns and soldiers and all that. And Billy the Kid's side loses. So he makes another one of his miraculous escapes. They burn the house down. You see in Young Guns where they burn the house down and they come out shooting. Well, that kind of happened. It didn't happen exactly the way. But basically, Billy the Kid does a miraculous escape. And Alexander McSween comes out and they kill him. Well, his wife, they were very wealthy. And his wife has some litigation going after Colonel Dudley, who's the commanding officer of the cavalry that came in and killed her husband. And he has a lawyer in town, and they just killed him right on the street. They just killed him. And so Billy the Kid actually was willing to testify that they had killed this guy in cold blood. Everybody else was scared of them because they were so corrupt. So the governor said, if you testify, I'll give you a pardon for everything you did. Well, he testified, and then the governor never gave him a pardon. Instead, he got arrested. That's when he escaped from the Lincoln County Jail. He killed the two deputies. He escaped. So this guy was, marvelous in the sense of, like, it's unbelievable what he did. He's like a pro athlete. He's a little kid guarded by two grown men, shackled to the floor. They're armed, and he escapes and kills them both. Like, how the heck does that happen? The guy was a demon. He was a terror. He was a very bad dude. And so anyway, he escapes, and then months later, or I think it was the next month, actually, Pat Garrett and a posse goes to Fort Sumner, which is about a few hours away, and they supposedly catch him on the porch, and that's when he says, Quien es, do you know this story?
No.
All right. I'll try to do a good job telling it. You're going to have to heavily edit this. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
So Billy the Kid is in Fort Sumner, which is a Mexican town, and he's far away from Lincoln, which is where he's wanted. Pat Garrett is the sheriff of Lincoln County. He knows the kid goes all around all the little towns, and he hears there's a dance in Fort Sumner. So he thinks if I'm the kid, I'd probably be at that dance because the kid likes to hang out with the Mexicans and dance. So he comes with 2 deputies to Fort Sumner. The funny thing is his ex-wife is from Fort Sumner and she died and they hate his guts in Fort Sumner. So everybody is Billy the Kid's friend in Fort Sumner. They all hate Pat Garrett. Also, the sheriff of Baca County, Sheriff Romero, is the local jurisdiction. Garrett's out of his jurisdiction. He's the sheriff of Lincoln. People will say, oh, he was also a U.S. Marshal, whatever, but he was acting as the sheriff of Lincoln out of his jurisdiction in this other guy's jurisdiction, looking for Billy the Kid with 2 deputies. So he goes to this rancher, Pete Maxwell, and it's nighttime. Back then there's no screens on the windows or doors. They leave the doors and windows open. So the 2 deputies are on the porch chatting. It's late at night, big moonlit night. And Garrett says, I'm going to go talk to Pete. I'm going to wake him up and see if he's seen the kid around. So he goes and wakes up Pete and says, have you seen the kid? Meanwhile, the kid has been at this dance with his buddy, supposedly, and he goes to his friend's house and he says, I'm really hungry. Can you give me anything to eat? And they said, well, we have beans and tortillas, but if you want meat, Pete Maxwell killed a deer today. It's hanging on the back porch. You can go cut some off, bring it back, and I'll cook it up for you. You can have that. So he goes over. This is the official version. Comes over, walks up on the porch. Supposedly he's zipping up his pants. Okay, which leads some to say maybe he was having a romantic encounter with Pete Maxwell's sister. Don't know. So he comes up on the porch and he doesn't see the deputies because they're kind of sitting down behind a post and it's dark. And then he sees them. Supposedly he pulls his gun really quick and says, "¿Quién? Who are you?" And they look and they stand up and they go, "Buddy, we're not going to hurt you. We're friends. We're not going to hurt you." And they didn't speak Spanish. And he says, "¿Quién? Who are you?" in Spanish. So they're like, we're friends. So he backs into Pete's darkened bedroom, thinking Pete's in there, not knowing Garrett's in there. Pete sees him, says to Garrett and says, "That's the kid." Garrett shoots him in the dark without identifying him, just shoots. He sees this silhouette in the doorway, shoots him and runs out he's scared to death. The kid's going to shoot back. So he shoots twice, runs out the door. The deputies are just talking to this guy. He goes in the bedroom. They hear 2 gunshots and somebody comes running out. So they go for their guns and it's their boss, Pat Garrett. And they're like, "Pat, what the hell? What's going on?" Because they thought he was a Mexican ranch hand.
Right.
Okay. This is the official story. They think he's a Mexican ranch hand. And Pat says, no, that was the kid. I think I got him. And John Poe, one of the deputies, goes, "Pat, the kid wouldn't have come here. You shot the wrong guy." And he said that Garrett was like really scared for a second. He goes, no, that was him. I know his voice too well to be mistaken. That was him. So they say, we killed Billy the Kid. And the friends of Billy the Kid surround the house. They're going to kill him. They're going to lynch the deputies and the cop because he's out of his jurisdiction. They don't know who this guy is. Well, actually, They hate him because his wife lived there. So they barricade themselves in Pete Maxwell's house. They allow the Mexican women to come get the body, prepare it for burial. They go bury the body. The next day, Garrett rounds up the local men of the town and has them sign a coroner's jury report. And he doesn't like what they write, so he rips it up and rewrites it himself, gives it to them and has them sign it, and then he loses it, the second one. So he goes back to Lincoln and says, "I killed Billy the Kid. He's dead. And I want the reward because there was a reward for killing Billy the Kid." They refused to give it to him. They wouldn't give him the reward. And that's it. That's the story. And so did he kill Billy the Kid or not?
No.
Because exactly.
Why would Billy the Kid speak Spanish to a couple white kids and say "¿Quién es"? Like come on. It was
a cop buddy of mine told me that. He goes, "I know right there he didn't kill him." I said, "How?" He goes, "Because if I talk to you in English, if you talk to me in Spanish and I respond in English, then you're going to respond in English."
Yeah, 100%. Right? That's human nature.
Yeah. And down in Key West, I go to a lot of Cuban, restaurants and stuff, and they talk to me because I have black hair. So they talk to me in Spanish. And as soon as they hear that I'm a, gringo, they talk to me in English, right? So, but if I try to fake my Spanish, they'll keep talking to me in Spanish. So yeah, right there, it's fishy. So there's a lot of reasons to suspect that Garrett didn't kill the kid. A lot of people said they saw him after that. They issued a warrant for his arrest. That was 1881. They issued a warrant for his arrest in 1883 and 1885. So that would seem to lead you to believe that maybe they didn't kill him. But he never showed up, right? So until he showed up, you really wouldn't know. Well, in 1950, he showed up. And he says he didn't kill me.
In 1950, so he would have been 90 years old, 80 years old?
90 years old, going on 91.
90 years old, supposedly, Billy the Kid, who was going by what? Like, because obviously he was hiding out for 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story he told was around 1910, 1911. He was a lawman. So I actually tracked down a lot of the aliases he used and found photos of him doing the things he said, like in the Rough Riders with Teddy Roosevelt. So it's all in my book. That's why I think my book has done so well, because there's actual evidence in there that you can piece together. And so he was going by the name William H. Roberts. Brushy Bill Roberts was his nickname. And people will say, well, Oliver Roberts, which was the guy's name was Oliver P. Roberts. But in the historical record, sometimes it's Oliver P., sometimes it's Oliver L. In the census, sometimes he says his parents were born in Kentucky. Other times he says they were born someplace else. So like it's constantly, he's dodging, he's hiding. And so, and he wasn't discovered. So what happened is a childhood friend of his, Jesse Evans, who's in the Billy the Kid TV series on Epix. They have this character, Jesse Evans. That was a real guy. So in Tombstone, the gang, the boys with the red sash and Curly Bill Brocious and Johnny Ringo and all these guys. So that was the boys. That was a real gang. And Jesse Evans was the leader of that gang. And Billy the Kid rode with those guys at one point. There was the Seven Rivers gang. There were the boy. There was a bunch of different gangs that Billy rode with, a bunch of different guys. But Jesse Evans was that guy. Well, Jesse Evans was supposedly killed a Texas Ranger in 1881, escaped prison in 1883, and disappeared. So in the old days, escaped, a lot of times they killed him. The
Right.
deputies would kill the guy and say, oh, he escaped. Well, allegedly, they left him for dead, but he didn't die and survived. And he lived under an alias until 1949 when his brother died in North Dakota.
This is Jesse Evans, also comes out of hiding 50
Jesse
years
Evans.
later.
Right. So when Jesse Evans goes to court to get his inheritance, the court assigns a probate attorney, this guy, William Morrison. And he's interviewing Jesse Evans. And just how life is, William Morrison, the lawyer, was a distant relative of Pete Maxwell, who owned the house where Billy the Kid was supposedly killed by Pat Garrett. So he says to Jesse Evans, wow, I can't believe you knew Billy the Kid. You know, I'm a distant relative of Pete Maxwell, who owned the house where Garrett killed Billy. And Jesse said, Garrett never killed Billy, not in 1881, not ever. He's still alive. And he's like, well, tell me more. And he's like, nope, I'm not telling you anything. And he's like, well, who can I talk to? He goes, we'll talk to this guy. So he sends him to talk to this guy, J. Frank Dalton, who claimed to be Jesse James in 1948. So it's just this onion of nonsense, right? That's why people reject it, I think, because it seems like this onion of nonsense. And, I thought
it's too Hollywood.
Yeah, and I thought it was an onion of nonsense also. But so Dalton leads him to this guy, Brushy Bill.
But hold on.
Yeah.
I have some interesting conspiracy theories or, stuff that I'll read in passing where I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Like, I'll go down a YouTube rabbit hole and I'll read a couple articles. Maybe I'll even invest like 10 hours listening to a book on Audible. But I've never been so obsessed with something where I'm like, you know what I'm going to do for the next year? I'm going to research everything that has to do with, Second Earth or Billy the Kid or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Are you like on the spectrum or something? Like, how did you go from like, oh, this is an interesting story to I'm going to learn everything about this and write a best-selling book on it? Like, it just seems like such a weird, hard left turn. Like, what happened?
I don't know, man. So my daughter works with special needs, actually. So she just got her master's from Pepperdine in Malibu. So she literally works with people on the spectrum. And she's like, Dad, I think you're on the spectrum. It's like, you're
like a dog with a bone.
Like, she doesn't really think I'm on the spectrum, but when I get into my moods, she'll say, I think you're on the spectrum just to mess with me.
All right, so fast forward to the 1950s when Billy the Kid supposedly shows back. Well, let me ask you this first. With all the research that you've done, do you believe that Brushy Bill Roberts was Billy the Kid and that was him in 1950 asking for whatever he asked for?
Yeah, so I won't dodge it. I'm going to say yes, but I want to give it a caveat if I may. What I've always said, you're the first one I've said yes to. What I always say is I think that all the evidence is in his favor. And the reason I say it that way is I don't care. Like, right. I don't care if the guy was Billy the Kid.
Yeah, you don't have a horse in this race.
I don't care. Like, it's just an interesting story. And what I really object to is the intellectual dishonesty. of how people say, oh, DNA proof. They literally never did DNA on Billy the Kid. I don't know why people say it. They say it all the time. They say, he didn't look like him. Well, forensic, facial recognition experts say he does. So, like, why? Why do people say the same stupid stuff over? So anyway, that's just minorly annoying. But yeah, I found a lot of circumstantial evidence that doesn't prove. Everybody wants a smoking gun,
right?
Like, where's the DNA or where's the smoking gun? You don't have that. You've got a body of evidence over 70 years in the historical record that's verifiable, that's objective, that's observable, that all is in his favor. Literally all of it is in his favor.
Right.
And then on the other side, you have Pat Garrett said so.
Right. Right.
And that's it.
And we've confirmed through that probate lawyer that Pat Garrett, or no, Jesse Evans, that was the guy who went to go try to get his inheritance, and they proved that was actually him.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you have, so then you could look at the credibility of Morrison. So the difference between me and some of the other guys that have come along and have studied this, I actually became close with Mr. Morrison's daughter, Barbara. Okay. And she was in her 90s by the time I got to know her, and she's passed away since then. Until she passed away, I didn't tell anybody I was in touch with her because she didn't want anybody talking to her. She did Unsolved Mysteries in the 80s when her dad died. And then after that, she wouldn't talk to anybody. People are rude, people demand, I want to see the papers.
She was whose daughter?
The lawyer's daughter.
Okay.
So the guy that found Brushy Bill, he said, I know you're Billy the Kid. And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, no, I know you are. Like, these people are telling me you're Billy the Kid. And he's like, nope, I knew him, but I'm not him. He refused to admit it. He was under a death sentence. He was wanted for murder. He's not going to say he's Billy the Kid.
Right.
And so over a period of time, Morrison gained his trust. Finally, Brushy Bill said, look, if you help me get the pardon that Lou Wallace promised me in 1879, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Now, how did he know that?
Got it. So Brushy Bill didn't come forward to be this pseudo celebrity. He had to be talked into it at the very tail end of his life.
Yes. And through Barbara Morrison, the attorney's daughter, I found all of those original correspondence letters, and I have everything. So I have every letter they ever wrote back and forth. And I know there's absolutely no fraud. It was a genuine, I have the letters where he's like, I'm not Billy the Kid. I'm not telling you. And his wife, he was 90, so his eyesight wasn't good enough for him to write. So his wife was writing his letters. She was Mexican. And so he didn't want her to know he was Billy the Kid because he didn't want her to think bad of him. So they had this kind of code going on where he's like, it's my half brother. It's not me, whatever. And then when Morrison visited him face to face in 1949, he confessed privately. He sent his wife to do an errand. And he said, okay, I'm going to come clean. I am Billy the Kid. And I want the pardon before I die. I'm 90 years old. Then he started telling him what really happened. And so that's a treasure trove. Like, we've never heard Billy the Kid's story from Billy the Kid. Right. Everybody's told his story, but he literally told it himself. And it's fascinating. I mean, he's like, I didn't kill Jim Carlisle, the sheriff. He got scared and jumped through the window. And when he jumped through the window, his own men thought it was us making a break for it. So they shot him. So like, he tells all this stuff of what happened, all these killings, how he escaped from the Lincoln County jail. So he sets the record straight on so many things. And as you, I don't want to babble, but here's my challenge, Scott. My challenge is this: where Brushy Bill Roberts agrees with the historical record, people say, everybody knows that. It's in the historical record, right? Like, Lou Wallace promised me a pardon. Well, everybody knows that. It's in the historical record. Where he disagrees with the historical record, they'll say, that's not what the historical record says. He's wrong. He can't win.
Right.
So if I tell you my version that I believe to be true, because I was an eyewitness, and that doesn't jive with what Pat Garrett said or somebody else said, I'm a liar. So you're never going to win because they don't believe this guy.
Right.
So what I did is I started looking for things that were mundane. You know, like he said, I had a house in San Patricio when he was Billy the Kid. So Billy the Kid is supposedly this whimsical, dumb, nomad wandering in and out of trouble, sleeping on people's couches, basically. Not exactly, but in Young Guns, he was like sleeping in the bunkhouse, and he's like sleeping with the pigs and stuff, So he didn't have a house. He wasn't a homeowner. Right. I never heard that Billy the Kid was a homeowner, had a mortgage. No, I didn't have mortgages back then. But anyway, so I look in the historical record in San Patricio in 1880. There's only two white guys in town. One's 49 years old with his wife and kids. The other one's 20 years old, same age as Billy the Kid. born in Texas, which Brushy Bill said he was born in Texas, not New York. And on the day of the census is sick of a gunshot wound. And he's the only one in town. And he's a farmer, supposedly, or a laborer, it says. So the name is Joseph S. Murphy. That's the guy who's sick of a gun. He's the only white guy there. So I started saying, well, was that an alias? You know, there was John S. Chisholm, Lawrence Murphy in the Lincoln County War. Did he just put those names together and come up with an alias? Well, it doesn't prove anything. You know, we'll never know.
Right.
But let's take that name and look at all the other things he said. He said he was in a boxing school in Cincinnati. He says he was a U.S. Marshal. He said he was in the Rough Riders. Well, the Rough Riders is interesting because he says he was a scout, and then he was in charge of breaking all the horses for the Army. And back then, officers could buy a commission, and they're a lot from wealthy families. So they would send their own blue blood horses down, but they weren't combat horses. They had to be trained to be combat horses. So he said, I was the guy that trained all the horses. And he said, I had a half Indian, Cherokee Indian guy that helped me out with it. So I find the guy that has that exact same service record. He enlisted where he says he enlisted. He had TB in the service. He was in the infirmary, just like he said. He was a scout. Then he was in charge of breaking horses. He had a half Cherokee Indian assistant that helped him break horses. And his name was not Joseph S. Murphy. It was William S. Murphy, as in Billy. And then I find a picture of him, and it's him.
It's so crazy because I'm reading this. I'm perusing this Wikipedia page on Brushy Bill Roberts. And the lawyer signs an affidavit saying that after Brushy Bill Roberts died, he examined him and found, 21 gunshot wounds and stabbings. So even if Brushy Bill Roberts wasn't Billy the Kid, he had a pretty fucking crazy story if he was shot and stabbed 27 times in his however many years he was on this planet. I'm with you. I'm with you, evidence pushing towards that Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid.
And he could slip handcuffs. Like literally his wrists were bigger than his hands, so he could just slip them right off. How many people do you know can just slip off handcuffs? It was a known attribute of Billy the Kid. It was a freakish thing, like Harry, you can literally slip them off. That's how he escaped so many times. So that's how he escaped?
Because his wrists were bigger than his palms, or however that would work?
Yeah, he could put his thumb down and just slip it right off. It was the same size. And so, he said the guy bent over to unshackle him from the floor, and he slipped his cuff off and whacked him on. These are real cast iron heavy manacles, and he crushed his skull. And then he grabbed his pistol, and then when he came up, he was looking at his own pistol. So yeah, that's all in the book. But yeah, so Brushy Bill could do that.
What? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a slam dunk that this guy was Billy the Kid. I don't say that, but there's no question. And again, if someone did the work and found legitimate, and there's a couple guys that have, there's some problems in Brushy's story. His early genealogy is all bad, because when he first, I have all the letters. I mean, he's telling Morrison, yeah, I was born in 1868. Yeah, I was born in 1859. Yeah, I was born in he's all over the place because he hadn't come out yet.
Right.
He was still pretending he wasn't Billy the Kid.
Right.
Then he dies 30 days after the governor. He had a stroke at the governor's mansion, and they all make fun of him. Oh, he didn't even know Pat Garrett's name. Dude was literally in the middle of a stroke. He's a 90-year-old guy.
Yeah.
In the middle of a stroke, and you're making fun of him that he couldn't remember people's names. It's freaking horrific.
Yeah, well, look at our
30 days later.
Look at our current president. He can't remember his own name. So when you get old, shit happens.
Yeah, but it's always like literally you're in the middle of a medical emergency and people are like making fun of the guys. Like, what kind of scumbag does that?
Well, and what's crazy?
Historians.
What's crazy is when you said that it's like accepted knowledge that they did a DNA test. All you have to do is go to the Wikipedia page and be like, Billy the Kid was buried in Fort Sumner. The initiative encountered difficulties from the beginning, including that no confirmation exists as to where the remains are located and ensuing legal obstacles. The exhumation of both sets of remains was blocked by a court in September 2004, and DNA evidence was never tested. So it's like, this just reminds me of any, I'll go with political lie. You just repeat it enough times and people start to believe it. So yeah, I'm with you that I don't like the intellectual dishonesty. So this is fascinating, and I'm guessing it's this journey of learning self-publishing, Amazon, et cetera, that then leads you to want to build your own publishing company. Can you tell me about that leap?
Yeah. So, so professionally, I'm proud of, my career. I worked with good people. I had really good mentors really young. I started working at 15 at the Cracker Barrel. In the store I was in, all the vice presidents from corporate came in to like do research and development. So I actually launched the country fried steak, the grilled catfish, like a lot of the menu items at Cracker Barrel. I did the recipe testing and development when I was like 16 and 17 years old. And so you learn a lot doing that. And I thought everybody knew this stuff. And then I get into McDonald's and, in the restaurant world after that, and they don't know that. So I think I had a bit of an advantage because I always had really good mentors. So I had a really good career, but I never felt as though I was compensated equitably for the value I created. I mean, the Wake Up Wrap is a great example. Like, they make a bunch of money. I estimate that at Dunkin', my work probably brought them in over $400 million, really in a short period of time. And that's franchising. That's a lot of the stuff I did.
Right.
And I probably shouldn't put that out there, but it was a lot. And guess what? Guess who didn't get that?
Right.
Me, right? And that's just how companies work, right? Like, you hire somebody, you want them to produce more, and I was always okay with that. But at one point, I was literally almost single-handedly, nobody can do a deal of this size single-handedly, but by and large, single-handedly, I was doing billion-dollar deals with major Comcast, AEG, which is Live Nation and all that. I had billion-dollar franchise development deals to bring brands to LA with these guys. And it was not, I had people coming in kind of messing up the deals, like, hey, think we can get more? And it's just frustrating whenever you can create such value for people and then have somebody like not see the vision and blow it. Like, I had guys blow my deals and gals blow my deals. And then on top of it all, you're not really being compensated, equitably, So I think the only way to really feel like you're getting what you should be getting is to be self-employed, and so not that I'm opposed to working, I just had a run recently where I was helping out a company that asked me to come in and help them out, and I did, and it was wildly successful, but it's not the same, it's not the same as having your own thing. So one of the greatest compliments I could get is somebody like Sean saying that I've made it possible for them to live the life that they want to live because of the work that I do has translated into value for them. Yeah. And so our criteria for publishing somebody is, can we add value? And Sean was already highly successful when I called him or reached out to him. I mean, the guy's in the top 1,000 books on Amazon. That's big. Yeah. And I reached out to him and said, I want to be your publisher. And he was basically, oh, I know the guys you publish. I know NC Reed. I know Jerry Young. And okay, I want you to be my publisher. And I was almost like, wait a minute, buddy. Like, I don't know if I can make it better. Like, you're already doing so well. I don't know if I can make it better. And I'm not going to feel right if I just take your money and, not add value. So after we published him, he got as high as number 262, I think, on Amazon. By the way, which is quite better.
There's 32 million books available on Amazon. 32 million books available on Amazon. Published titles, 54% of which are English. So let's say, 16 million English books, maybe half of those are fiction, maybe 5% of that are in the post-apocalyptic. So then you're 16, 8 million. He's in the top 1,000 of all books in post-apocalyptic non-fiction. He's like in the top 10. Nope. That means he's beating out hundreds of thousands of books of similar artists. And Sean's not like a classically trained writer. He was an EMT with this idea floating in his mind. So between the two of you, his story and your publicity must be doing something right.
I think he has a gift, though. He was number 262. That's ahead of 32 million books in my book. So he's got a gift. So George Goodall is the most prolific audiobook narrator. I probably shouldn't say it. I'll say it anyway. He's the most prolific audiobook narrator in the world. He narrates for Stephen King. He narrates for everybody. He's really expensive. And we use a guy, Christopher Lane, who's equally impressive, who narrates for Dean Koontz and all this. Guy's awesome. He's in our family. We love the guy. He does a lot of work for me narrating our books. And he narrated the Ranch series, Christopher. Well, book 4 comes along, I think it was, and Christopher was already booked with something, and I couldn't use Christopher. So we used George Goodall, who's an awesome guy. I mean, he's number one in the world. And these guys, thousands and thousands of dollars to hire this guy to read a book. Okay. So we hired George. George calls me or emails me and says, can we please have a phone call? I'm done. Book's done, but I got to talk to you. It's about Sean's book. So I get on the phone with this guy and he goes, I'm 83 years old or however old he is. And he goes, I've never asked to speak with a publisher ever. And he goes, I just want to tell you that this guy doesn't follow, and don't be mad at me, Sean. He goes, this guy doesn't follow any of the rules of a professional writer. There's no climax. There's no protagonist. There's no he just takes dialogue and runs with it. And he ran with it for almost 300 pages or whatever. And he goes, I loved it. He goes, I've never read a book like this. He goes, it just goes to show you, forget the rules, write what you want to write. And this guy does it and it works. He goes, I absolutely loved it. He goes, this is the best book I've read, I think, ever. And I was like, George, coming from you, like that's a major, major thing. Well, the fans hated it because we switched narrators. So we literally had to reproduce it with Christopher Lane. And I wasted all that money on George, but it was worth the story, I think, because it just shows certain people have a gift, and Sean has that gift. You can call it genius or whatever. But if a lot of people try to say, well, let's use Grammarly or whatever, get proofreaders to like change. We don't edit your content really. It's you. My job is to represent your brand. And you're writing. So if you're writing, it's interesting because as a publisher, if you sell 1 million copies, it's because you're an amazing writer. If you don't sell any, it's because I stink as a publisher. Right. So I can't win. Okay. And I don't want to win. I want you to win. And so our stuff is completely set up to where the author always outperforms us as the publisher. We pay all the bills. We're obviously not a vanity press. So we're a traditional independent press. So we invest our money to make you successful. And sometimes it works, and Sean is a great example of, me either being really good at spotting talent or me being lucky.
Hey, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. And he's a wonderful person, and that's what it's all about. But hey, not just him. I mean, NC Reed, we have so many amazing authors. I shouldn't name them because I'm going to miss one.
By the way,
we have
NC
really
Reed, I'm on book 3 of NC Reed's Fire from the Sky series. But he's not public about who he is. I looked up his Facebook and he's like,
a cat.
Yeah, he's like, if I was NC Reed, this is the kind of guy he would be. So I immediately called Sean and I was like, Sean, are you NC Reed? Is this just another pen name of yours? He's like, no. He's like, I've met NC Reed. I am not NC Reed, and that guy is an awesome dude. He writes great books. Keep reading.
Awesome guy.
And I love
awesome
that.
Family. Awesome family. Him and his wife both they're just, I gotta sound like I'm kissing up, but these people are really unique people, and that's what's special in my opinion. He got a call. I guess I can say this. He got a call from Podium Audio, which is they're about 50 million, I think, in revenue, according to the industry stats. And they do The Martian, Andy Weir, which is the Matt Damon movie and all that.
Yeah, I got to meet Andy in a mastermind group that I part of, and got got an advanced copy of his book Hail Mary, which I devoured in like one sitting because it's so freaking good. Andy's a great dude.
Yeah, so I mean, and Podium is world class, right? These people are world class. So their acquisitions editor calls him and says, "Hey, I noticed you don't have your audiobooks produced." This is back a few years. Produced for Parnos Company, the Black Sheep of Solon, really underrated series. It's one NC Reed series. It's amazing. And I noticed you don't have the audiobooks. So we had just never gotten around to doing the audiobooks to him. And we want to publish your audiobooks. And he says, I don't talk to anybody. You got to talk to Dan. And so they call me and they're like, what's with this guy? He won't talk to anybody. He wants everybody to talk to you. And I said, well, I represent him. I've got his back. We're a team. And that's the thing. So they wanted to publish this series. And I went to him and I said, look, for me, it's revenue with no capital expense, right? I mean, rather than spend thousands of dollars per book, right? I can let them spend thousands, but you're not going to get the same royalty that you would get from me. My royalty rates are better than theirs, right, to the author. So, selfishly, it would be probably better for me to just let them do it and just take, my cut of your money. Right. But, I don't feel good about that. So what do you think we should do? And he goes, I trust you completely, whatever you want to do. Well, at the time, we hadn't been successful in audiobook yet. And I didn't really understand it. So I wanted to talk to them to learn what they were doing differently. And as the more I talked to them, I couldn't figure out anything they were doing differently. They're like, well, we're a big public, or we're not self-published. We're a real publisher. I was like, I'm a real publisher. What are you talking about?
Right.
I sold millions of books. I think that makes me a real publisher, So it's like, all right, we've had number one bestsellers. So we had number 262, I don't see, and I love these people, so I shouldn't talk like this. But at the time I'm like, what are you talking about? So long story short, we did it as a test, and we gave them the Black Sheep of Solon series. And then Odd Billy Todd came out, narrated by Christopher Lane. And I get a call from the podium, and they said, how the hell did you get the DD? And I said, what's that? They said, the daily deal. How'd you get the daily deal? So I have no idea what it was. Cyber Monday. Okay, 2019, Cyber Monday. She was the daily deal on Amazon. On the biggest shopping day of the year, Cyber Monday, the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Billy Todd is the daily deal. And I looked, and we were number one in every category. We were number two worldwide, all categories. So it was, I forget the book. It wasn't Michelle Obama's book. It was like Michelle Obama's book when it first came out, or whatever the number. And then our book was number two. So we literally were selling thousands of copies a day.
Amazing.
At that point of that book. And my first thought was, I wish I hadn't signed that deal. Because they weren't number two. Right. And so I said, look, I'm never going to do a joint venture again. But, at the time you're learning, this is a big $50 million company, they're bigger than me. I wanted to learn. I thought maybe they have a different audience, so maybe we can expose NC to a whole nother audience that I'm not reaching. And then I find out that's not true.
So I would assume, if I was just listening, all this stuff, it's a game, it's rigged. You're telling me Odd Billy Todd, which is a great book by NC Reed. Yeah. Just coincidentally, dumb luck, the Amazon algorithm picked him to be the daily deal of the day on Cyber Monday. Like, you didn't have to give somebody an envelope full of cash for that to happen, or you didn't have some insider hookup at Amazon or anything like that. It was just dumb luck.
No, so boy, I didn't give anybody an envelope full of cash, and I didn't have the hookup. I'll say this: I have a great relationship with Amazon. Okay. Anything they want me to do, you got it. Okay, so we are Kindle Unlimited exclusive. So all of our books are Kindle Unlimited exclusive. We don't publish a single ebook that's not part of that program. And then anytime they say, hey, we'd like to do this, yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And anytime they bring anything to my attention, it's usually resolved in 5 minutes. So that algorithm, I think, favors us because of how we do business with Amazon. I'm an enterprise publisher, so you can have the self-published. We've graduated beyond that at this point. We're a Kindle enterprise publisher. People don't even know what that is, but HarperCollins, everybody are enterprise publishers, and we're an enterprise publisher now. We had the opportunity to do a direct deal with ACX. That was one of the selling points. One of the other publishers pitched me on, well, we have a direct relationship. We can set our release dates. We can this and that. And the royalty rates aren't the same. They're more favorable, actually, if you go a different route. And so we maintain that different route to keep because it's the author's money, right? So, right. I mean, I can do what I want under our contracts, but I always have their back. I mean, my job is to make them money.
Here's what I guess I don't understand. Hopefully this doesn't insult you too much, but it sounds like you are crushing it in one vertical, which is Amazon, which is the 800-pound gorilla, right? Or the elephant in the room. But when I think of a publisher, I think like, okay, they're doing marketing and they're doing organic this and they're doing guerrilla marketing tactics. And then I look at Sean's Instagram. He has like 4 followers. Your Instagram has 25 followers. Your website looks good, but it's not great. It's not like it was a $250,000 build for your website. But somehow you're getting a massive amount of books out there. Have you just?
Yeah, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like, have you? It sounds like you're like, no, you don't have to do any of that garbage. You just have to be world class at doing Amazon. So is that it? Like you're the Amazon savant?
No. It's not just that. I mean, so there's certain trade secrets, I guess, that I don't divulge, but I'll say this. there's a whole industry that supports itself by being there's a whole support industry that sustains itself by telling people what to do.
Got it.
Right. And so, yeah, that's their job, is to tell you what to do. And that logic, everybody's like, well, if you want to be successful, do this, do this, do this, do this. They're making money off telling you what to do.
Right.
They're not doing it.
Right.
Now, there's some people that have done it and have been successful. They're rare. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to hear necessarily. There's been things that I learned from really, it's our author community. You know, I learned something from Sean. I learned something from NC Reed. And together, you know, we do our best to kind of give the customer a good product. I mean, we're a customer business, right? So
right.
I give you one example, if I may.
Yeah, of course. No, go for it. This is what we're here for.
I get an email today from a lady. It's actually Sean's book. Man, we're talking about Sean's book a lot. A lady emails me today and says, I'm reading The Ranch. It's horrible. Literally, I should read you the email. It's horrible. There's so many grammatical errors, so many spelling mistakes. It's horrible. It's really, I feel like I overpaid for this book. You know, I don't even think I can finish reading it. Do you even proofread these books before you publish them? That's what she says. And every time since 2015, I get an email like that. It's somebody that wants me to hire them to do proofreading. So whether or not they're legitimate errors, they're going to say, oh my God, like this is a mess. Like, you know, by the way, I happen to do this. Right. You want to hire me? I'll do it.
Funny how that works.
So I'm in a bad mood and I read this email and I'm like, come on, lady, like, come on. Like, I know what you're doing. Like, I should just ignore this. I should send it to spam, whatever. But I had a mentor early on, and the guy was a mega millionaire, had a huge company, almost $1 billion company. And he said, you've heard the customer's always right, right? He says the customer's not always right, but they're always the customer. And I thought of that today. The customer's not always right, but they're always the customer. And I responded to the lady and I said, I'm so sorry you had a bad experience. I really appreciate this. You know, we're going to look into this and get it corrected right away. Thank you so much for letting me know. Okay. She responds again, do you have a proofreader? And I think I was right. I knew it. I was right. She wants me to hire her. Like, that's not a normal thing, right? A normal person, you just return the book. If it's that bad, you just return it.
Yeah, or you just say, I bought it on Kindle for, I don't know, free or 99 cents. This is not worth my time to send this fucking email to complain when I spent 99 cents. Like, people's lives are just empty. Anyway, I digress.
And then to insist on the question being answered, whether or not we proofread books. So I really think about it, and I responded. And I said, the books go through a number of steps in the publishing process, including proofreading. That particular book was published in 2019. The person that did it at that time no longer works for us, but we'll go back and make sure that we whatever. And again, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. She responds and says, I'm really surprised you took the time to answer. Thank you so much for responding to my email and my questions. I'll leave a positive review. And I thought, holy crap, she wasn't looking for a job. It was legitimate. In her world, that she just wanted to be heard. So that's the difference, baby. Like, that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the magic. They're not always right, but they're the customer.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on marketing. I'd like to think I'm decent at it. I get the building a community. A lot of that's integral to the Amazon algorithm. You know, people follow the author.
Right.
And so, you know, we advertise on Amazon. We advertise off Amazon. We do broad spectrum marketing. We do targeted marketing. I'm watching reviews. I'm watching rankings all day long. And we have other stuff too. I mean, we're not exclusive to Amazon, but they're 70% of the global book market. So if you're number 2 worldwide on Amazon, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So, but look, it's become way more competitive. We're still doing great. Way more competitive. And I'll tell you why, if you're interested.
Very much so.
I get a guy, most of our authors historically, now we get dozens of submissions a week. I mean, dozens. And then people always think, well, why didn't you like my book? Why didn't you want to publish my book? Was it the writing? What can I do differently? It's like, buddy, I didn't even read it. Okay. Like we've had acquisitions editors and people to do this, but they can't keep up, and at some point it's like, we can only publish so much. It's not as easy to scale, right? But historically, I would pick you. I would see a certain profile that I was looking for, certain components that I would notice, that I would say, this is the person I want. And I would go after them, and I would say, I want to be your publisher. So I did that with Sean. I did it with NC Reed. I did it with Jerry D. Young, my first guy, and other people. And then we do get submissions, and we review submissions and things. But historically, all my best-selling authors are people I picked. And so where is I going with all this? Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so I'm talking to this guy. So I find this guy that I want to pitch. And I don't do this very often either. We like 2 or 3 a year we would sign, if that. And so I reach out to this guy and I said, hey, would you be interested in having a conversation? So he says, maybe. I'm not sure. Is it okay if I call you in a couple months? I say, yes. A couple months goes by. He reaches out. Hey, I'm ready to talk. Great. We get on the phone. He says, I've made $10,000 in 3 months with one book. Okay. I've made 10,000 bucks. New author, first book out of the gate.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I made 10 grand in 3 months. This guy tells me, right? I spent 12 on Facebook ads. To make the 10. So he's got a job. So he just puts it all back in the business. This is what I'm dealing with as a professional publishing business. And this is what HarperCollins, they're dealing with guys like me, but they're also dealing with guys that have a job. This is a side hustle. And every dollar they make, they put right back in. And in many cases, they're overspending. I can spend a couple grand on this because I'm really trying to be an author. But the second they stop spending, the sales go to zero. Right. Now, I still spend on Sean's stuff. I still spend on NC Reed. But those are profitable investments for me.
Right.
Some books, when we publish, we spend, it sells. We stop spending it, it stops selling. Those are difficult, right? Because something's wrong in the ecosystem somewhere to where it can't sustain itself without artificial injection of resources.
Yeah.
And so
is that why you see guys like Nicholas Sansbury Smith is somebody I've read a lot of his post-apocalyptic stuff. Is that why they will stay, in my opinion, my humble opinion, you don't have to chime in, but is that why they'll stay with a character or a novelization series into book 10, 12, 15? Like I've read one, the Helldiver series. I love the first 5 books. And now it's just like, all right, dude, we're on book 13. It's getting a little tired. But is that because they could spend money on the ecosystem of getting somebody to buy book 1 and then they will, without additional investments, buy book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Is that why people serialize this?
I was going to say I don't want to comment, but that's pretty self-evident, I guess. So yeah, I mean, your customer acquisition cost, if you can spread it across 13 books, certainly. But that's where the author's doing the work.
Right.
Of being interesting, right, for 13 books. So it's not, there's formulaic publishers and authors that, there's one guy who's thrown his name on everybody else's book, and I think it's lame, but he's getting away with it. So, I kicked around having Sean write the foreword for one of our other guys, which I think is legitimate. But there's all kinds of gimmicks and tricks. And so authors will call me and say, have you heard of BookBub? It's like, yes. I dropped $500 on BookBub, and 5 minutes later it was gone. And we saw nothing in sales, because they have millions. They're charging you impression. So if I send an email to 30 million people, you got 30 million impressions, times 10 cents or 50 cents or whatever it is. So, I mean, you can go bankrupt pretty fast if you're stupid.
Speaking of gimmicks, I don't know if they have this in, what can I say about this? Hold on. Let me think about this.
And I'm not bashing BookBub. Sorry. I just mean,
I don't know anything about
no
that.
No marketing should be blind. When I was on a certain, multinational beverage company's business, I was on the largest QSR, quick service restaurant in the world. And they were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on billboards for onion McDoubles. And nobody wants to buy an onion McDouble. So I'd sit in the back of the room and say, why don't you disperse this money across the franchisee pool? Because you're wasting it. Like nobody's going to buy that. But you have the agency and corporate people and different people think this is a great idea.
Everybody's gonna make money.
They're watching them waste literally $400,000. So one thing I think I can say is I was involved in the domestic spend for the dollar any size soft drink on McDonald's. So we did window clings on all of the McDonald's. That was me. We actually had to do a business case to say why they should do window clings, because the visual identity of the store. I don't know if you may have to cut this out. The visual identity of the stores said no window graphics. It also said no beverage because they want to be known for food at the time. And so we had to convince them, one, to feature beverage because beverage drives the occasion, the visit. And then two, to be on the windows because they had 25,000 cars a day on average going past an average McDonald's.
I drive back and forward between Las Vegas and Nevada every other week. And I go to McDonald's because they have $1 any size iced tea.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just saying, I like other food better, but I do it because I need 2 iced teas for the drive, and I go to McDonald's. Anyway.
Yeah, that campaign definitely worked because I would not be caught dead eating McDonald's, except for when I drive through for $1 iced tea, I'll be like, quarter pounder of cheese can't be that bad. And then it sits in my gut for 4 days. But what I was going to say, the equivalency on the nonfiction side, I know a guy who wrote a business book, and I don't know the exact mechanics of this, but it was basically, hey, you give us $25,000, we have a several million person email list. We will. I think your mic's on, Chris, because I'm getting a little bit of feedback. We will email your free, ebook, or you put it on Amazon for free for a couple days. We email our 6 million person email list. You are guaranteed to get enough downloads to be on the Wall Street Journal, like #1. So then you can advertise that you're a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, blah 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 blah. And it's like, yes. And it's clearly like a pay to play. And since you have to offer the ebook for free, you're not making any money on that. It's just to get that stamp saying that I'm #1 on the Wall Street Journal, and hopefully that turns into speaking opportunities and stuff. So I'm guessing the same type of shenanigans happens in the fiction world as it does in the nonfiction world.
Oh my God. We don't do any of that stuff, man. I hate it. It's pay to play. There's also vanity presses. We don't take money from the authors. I hate it. At this point in my life, it's like, look, I don't work for you guys. I mean, I do work for you, but in a different way, right? Like, I don't want people nitpicking, and you know what I mean? Like, our profile is authors that want to be authors and write. And the best for everything is like, you publish, we write. And because there's a bunch of people that I employ to do different things. But we take it very seriously that we're representing the author. They make their living off of this.
Yeah.
So we take it seriously. And I do too now.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the big corporate jobs at the moment.
And without divulging any trade secrets or anything about one individual author, can you give us some eye-popping numbers? Like what's the best-selling, number? You don't have to tell us which novel. I don't want to rat out any of your other authors or make them feel bad. But can you tell us, like, hey, I have a novel that has sold 20,000 copies, 100,000 copies. Like, do you have any eye-popping numbers where you're like, oh man, this is really good stuff?
Yeah. We've sold millions of books. I have 20 authors, about each, some have written 2 or 3 books. The most prolific author would be NC Reed, who has about 20 or so books. 500 books, and we've sold millions of copies. So if you divide millions by 500, the average book with us sells
really well,
tens of thousands of copies.
Which, for context, what people don't know is I've sold my nonfiction book. I've sold thousands and thousands of copies directly to loan officers who then go review them with realtors. But I think on Amazon lifetime, we've sold maybe 2,000 copies, 2,400 copies, and that's crushing it. Like, I remember
that's crushing it. Yeah, you're doing amazing.
I remember when I hired a writing coach. When I hired a writing coach, they said to help me finish my book, they were like, hey, just first of all, before we take a penny from you, we want to know why you're writing the book, because nobody makes money writing books, period. If this isn't if this isn't a lead magnet for other things, if this isn't promoting your coaching or your mortgage business, just stop. Don't do it, because nobody makes money writing books. You'll be lucky if you sell a couple hundred copies. I've sold several thousand. And I appreciated the honesty. So yeah, give us some stats on the.
Yeah. So, once again, let me refocus here. So That is absolutely true. Let's say there's 30 million books on Amazon. And we'll keep it there, right? So they rank every product. Number one toothbrush, number one everything. If you are in the top 1%, so 10% would be 3 million, right?
Yep.
1% would be 300,000.
Right.
If you are ranked number 300,000 on Amazon, that ranking is equal, in my experience, roughly to one book every week or two. So on Kindle.
Whoa, wait. If you're
Yeah.
in the top 1% of books sold on Amazon, you're selling a book-ish a week?
Yeah, that's my experience.
Wow.
Watching these rankings for 10 years, all day, every day, and correlating that to, sales. So in my head, and it could be calibrated, right? Tuned in. Roughly, that's a book a week. So if you're on Kindle and it's $2.99, you get $2.10 royalty. Our deal is 50-50. All the expenses come out of my 50. Okay. So I usually don't tell everybody. I don't care. But that way, the author by definition always makes more than I do. If we have a bad month and you say, I'm upset because I had a bad month, I say, how do you think I feel? Because I paid all the bills out of my 50.
Right.
And people have told me that's too generous. I could get away with giving them 30% or 40% or 45%. And I don't care. It's how I did it from the beginning. I think it is generous. Everybody tells me it's generous. Other people's like, oh, it's not generous. Okay, but I actually sell books, right? So percentages, you don't deposit percentages, you deposit dollars. So anyway, but all the expenses come out of my 50. And so $2.10. So you get $1.05 a week if you're in the 300,000 range ish. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's $5.
Yeah,
$5.
whatever.
But it's not more than that. Okay. If you are in the top 100,000, so that's what, 0.3%. Now you're selling about a book a day. Okay. Or 2 a day. So, $2. So now you're getting $60 a month, right? We have authors that make over $100,000 a year as writers for us.
All right, I gotta, Chris, can you go to AWS and look up one? Because I'm always fascinated. I don't do anything to promote my book, and I'll get this little AWS deposit for $119, $47, $197. I'm like, who's finding my book and reading it? So
the
Chris,
public, maybe the public.
Yeah, so Chris, you got to look it up. See how much money we've made, how many copies we've sold. I don't know. I don't even know where we're ranking these days. I don't. Unlike you, with my own book, I don't follow any of this stuff. So this is pretty funny.
I'm gonna look.
It's called Lead Generate 61 Days to Double Your Pay.
I'd be your publisher, man. Look at this. You got good reviews. 410,000. I don't know. That's that's Kindle. And then you got paperback. So it's by category, right? So your paperback 341,000. You're in the top 1%.
I'm getting close.
45,000 in Audible. That's pretty good.
Really?
You're making more Audible. Yeah, that's very respectable.
Wow.
So let me give you so The Ranch right now. Now this is a book that was published 4 years ago. It is number 9,000 in Audible. It's number 76 in the top 100 dystopian. So currently, and I would share my screen, but I probably shouldn't do that.
No, don't do that.
I'm just on Amazon. So if you go on dystopian fiction right now, Sean Liscombe is number 76 out of the top 100. He's outselling Edge of Anarchy, whatever that is. Tom Abrams. Let's see if he's selling it. But Helldivers, book 1, he's outselling that. The Ranch 2 is number 93. So he's got 2 in the top 100 right now.
Good on you, Sean. And the only authors of yours that I've had time to dive into is Sean and NC, so we keep coming back to them. But both of them, the Ranch series and the Fire in the Sky series, both amazing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and we have, all of our authors are great. They don't all, for whatever reason, sell the same for whatever reason, right? But we have Ronnie Ashmore, who's a Western writer, who's really good, and other very prominent Western writers have praised his work, like guys you've heard of. We've got some guys we just signed. There's the guy Austin Gunderson who writes epic fantasy, who's really good. And then we've got sports fiction. These guys are professional sports writers in their real life. And the one submission I got, I read it cover to cover, and I never read submissions, and I literally read it cover to cover. It's called Lone Star, and it's about a guy that was hired. He's a high school football coach, and he gets hired for an NFL team. It's not NFL, but the pros. He gets hired for an NFL team, and it's a chance of a lifetime. I mean, who hires a high school coach to coach in the pros? So he gets this dream job and finds out they hired him to lose, because if the attendance goes below a certain level, they can move the team. So they totally set this guy up. And basically, if they fire him for any reason, he has to pay back all the money. So he doesn't make any money. He's basically on the verge of bankruptcy. He's destroyed his whole life because he's taken this dream job, and it's just a nightmare. But it's a really, really, really great book. Reminds me of some bosses I've had in my life.
All right, Chris, what did you find out for us?
I found out that you've changed your Amazon password and it's not updated, so I don't know how to get in.
Okay, it's the new one, so you can log in there and find out for us. So yeah, we'll get back to you on that. But what's next for you? Like, how do you grow as a publisher? I'm sure because you're managing the team and you're finding the talent, there is a finite number of authors you can manage. Is it just more productivity out of your existing authors? Is it finding more great authors that are aligned with your brand, or what's next for Dan Edwards?
Oh boy. It's a good question. So we dropped heavily into audiobook, and we're doing extremely well in audiobook. The good news on that is there's a barrier to entry, right? So there's no barrier to entry for anybody to just publish ebook or print book. Anybody can print on demand and anybody can self-publish, but not everybody can go hire, George Goodall for $8,000 and have him read a book for you.
Right.
Because if you spend $8,000 and it doesn't sell, you do that a bunch of times, you're going to go out of business.
Yep.
So fortunately we've been around. We have the resources. We can hire the Christopher Lanes, the George Goodalls. I hired Barry Corbin, the actor from Northern Exposure. And Barry's awesome. So he narrated my book for me. And so, we have the resources to do that. So we're kind of playing in that space more so than we did originally. And then it's just continuing to find good talent. We're not trying to. There's another publisher that I watch that I could have totally done this, because I did kind of high net worth franchising and licensing. And so, he raised a bunch of money, got an office in Manhattan, hired a bunch of people, and became a publisher, right? And I didn't do it that way. I really have no debt, no expenses, no anything. I have advertising and marketing, whatever.
Right.
We are highly efficient. And we just keep doing what we do until something breaks loose. And we got to make sure that we service the people we've got, Mm-hmm. So if I was ever in a situation where I couldn't take care of the authors I had, then, we change it to where I could, because we just take that very seriously. So I don't know. So nothing.
Okay.
So nothing is the answer. Although I'm working on a documentary with Emilio Estevez, which I'm very excited about.
I'm going to have to guess that's about Billy the Kid.
It is. Yeah. So Emilio has my book. He went into, there's a Billy the Kid museum in Hyco, Texas. And Emilio walked in one day, and I joke around. They joke around because I'm everywhere in there, because I wrote the book that basically allegedly proved that this guy was Billy the Kid. So they got videos of me playing, and they joke and say it's a Dan Edwards museum, but it's not. It's a Billy the Kid museum. So Emilio goes in there, sees my book, sees everything, and he stays in touch with the museum director, Sue Land. And after a couple of years, Sue reaches out to me and says, "Hey, would you be willing to talk to Emilio?" And I said, well, of course, he's Billy the Kid. I mean, come on, he's Emilio Estevez.
For those that don't know, or they were living under a rock in the 80s and 90s, Emilio Estevez played Billy the Kid in Young Guns and Young Guns 2, which those two movies just are seared into my memory. The Bon Jovi soundtrack, like that's in my childhood wheelhouse. So Emilio to me will always be Billy the Kid.
Yeah, and he's Coach Bombay, right? Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
So he had an amazing career, amazing actor. His dad is Martin Sheen. His brother is Charlie Sheen. And one of the most surreal moments, and I don't really talk about this stuff, but one of the most surreal moments is I'm talking to him on the phone, and he says, "Yeah, I was telling my brother about you the other day," and I was like, "Charlie, you're talking to Charlie Sheen about me yesterday?" And it was very natural. And he goes, "Yeah, Charlie." And I was like, "Wow." And then one time I was talking about he's actually trying to make a movie that would continue the story of Brushy Bill Roberts. I think there was some desire originally to make Young Guns 3. It may not be under that franchise. Again, I don't want to speak for him, so I want to be really careful just because I'm conservative. But anyway, there's a script, for the next movie that would talk about Brushy Bill Roberts. I have a copy. I've been talking to him about dialogue, and we were talking about Red Dawn with Patrick Swayze. And
another movie that's seared in my brain.
Yeah. So I'm like, this movie Red Dawn, whatever. He goes, "Yeah, Charlie's movie." And I go, "What do you mean Charlie's movie?" He goes, "My brother." I was like, "Oh yeah, Charlie Sheen was in that movie." And he was in that. He's really young, but he was in that movie.
Yeah. And Jennifer Grey's in that movie. A lot of people don't know Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey had chemistry from that movie that transferred over to Dirty Dancing.
So, that was filmed in Las Vegas, New Mexico. So not Las Vegas, Nevada, Las Vegas, New Mexico. And that scene at the end where I think he's carrying Charlie Sheen. I've been to that park in Las Vegas, and they still have the downtown of that town is where. And Patrick Swayze bought a ranch there after filming. He loved it so much. It's a really cool spot. It's the only free to the public hot springs in the United States. And you literally go out there, and there's a hot springs outside of town, and you can just jump in. It's like a mineral bath hot springs. And Billy the Kid and his gang used to swim in that hot springs. Wow. It's crazy. So when I was there, there's like these naked hippie people with arm hair and stuff. But it was still super cool, But anyway, so this documentary, we have a never before seen photo of Billy the Kid from when he was a kid in Silver City, New Mexico, with his mom, Catherine Antrim, and William Antrim. And he lived there with him, but that's not who the photo is with. So anyway, it's a never before seen photo, and we've had it authenticated by NYPD, Facial Recognition Department. And so I'm making a documentary about it. It's almost done. And not only is Emilio narrating it, he's already narrated it. Actually, he sent me his release. I was so excited to get his signature on that paper. Not that I needed it, but it just really made it real for some reason.
Right.
And we're talking, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing for the score?" And I was like, "The score? Oh, the music."
Right.
I'm not a big movie producer over here,
You're like Hans Zimmer, obviously. Come on.
Yeah. And he says, "What do you think about Tim Montana?" Well, Tim Montana is an up and coming country musician who's touring with ZZ Top. And so I said, "That would be amazing because you want to talk to him." So I said, "Yeah." So I end up talking to Tim Montana, and he goes, "Hold on, here's Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top." And Billy gets on the phone, is like, "Tell me about Billy the Kid." So I'm telling him about Brushy Bill Roberts. He goes, "Oh man, that's cool." It's like, wow, holy cow, I'm talking to Billy Gibbons. So then I'm talking to Emilio, not that we talk that often, but we've talked a number of times. And I said, "Dude, I talked to Billy Gibbons." He's like, "I haven't even talked to Billy Gibbons yet." So it's been just surreal because, he is an amazing actor. He's an amazing person. He's a director. He did a lot of great stuff. And to have him help me out with my little Billy Kid photo project is cool.
That's amazing, man. Like, it just shows that even if you're a high school dropout, you get passionate about something, you can be real successful.
Yeah. Hopefully we do all right with it. It's not about the money, but I think that, I don't own the photo. So, I had to get a license agreement to be able to use the photo, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of stuff, just licensing music. I've never done that before. Total respect, tip of the hat. There's, Sony, BMG, Peer Music, Spirit, like all these different constituencies. And if you've never licensed music, let's say there's 3 of you guys that own this song. Okay.
It's miserable from what I've heard.
Yeah. So let's say I say, okay, I'm going to pick a big number. Well, big to me. So I'm going to say, "Hey, I'll give you 10 grand to license this song for this documentary." And you're like, "Yeah, no problem. I'm good." Okay, good. I go to the second person. 10 grand, Scott already agreed to it. Oh, Scott's good with it? Yeah. then I'm good with it. No problem. 10 grand, 10 grand, no problem. You get to the third person, they're like, no, I want 50. If you really want to do it and it's 50, you got to go back and pay the other 250 also. So it doesn't just go up. It's called most favored nation status.
Yep.
So if you give them more, everybody gets more. So automatically it exponentially goes higher, right? And in some case, like, if it's shared, but there's different sides to it. So that was a real education for me, because I was like, we're good. I talked to so-and-so, licensed. It's like, no, you got 5 more people to talk to, and you got to negotiate independently with all of them.
Please tell me you're licensing Bon Jovi's Blaze of Glory from Young Guns too. Like, please tell me that's the song
Tim Montana. It's better. It's
okay.
Tim Montana.
Perfect. Okay.
And Tim is awesome. He made it all happen. And Mr. Estevez made it all happen. But so we're really, really close. I haven't signed the contracts on the music. We'll cut that out.
Yeah. We'll get that covered.
No signed contract.
This isn't getting released for about a month and a half, so you'll be good. You'll have it signed by then. But that's
everything
Chris.
Else is
What'd you find out about the book, if anything? By the way, do we get into AWS?
I learned that you have sold 4,935 units. That would be 3,331 print books and 1,604 Kindle.
Oh, not bad for nonfiction from a moron who doesn't know how to write.
And also,
that's really good.
I think that's unusual, because you have you're out selling print 3-1 to Kindle, and usually it's the other way around. I think. I'm not sure.
That's correct.
Wow. So. All right. Well, cool.
Well, and you make more on the print, right? So you're probably making $4 or $5, $6-7 on a print copy.
Yeah. On the Amazon, because I'm not any type of favorite nation status on Amazon, I think they sell it for 16. They take 50% off the top, so they take 8. Then they charge you the $4 for printing and shipping. So I think I make $4 and 32 cents a copy or something crazy like that. Which once in a while I get a check that makes my car payment or my cell phone bill payment. Or something.
Yeah. We have a really good author, Ben English, who writes. He's a state trooper in Texas, Highway Patrol, and he does Texas tourism books, and he sells a lot of print books. Does a lot of book signing, and that's the other thing. Everybody's different. Like NC Reed is, nobody knows who he is. Other guys go out and do book signings and do trade shows and different things, and so we support kind of. I had one guy. He calls me up and says, hey, I sold 50 books today. And I said, that's amazing. He goes, where do I send your half? I said, what do you mean, send my half? He goes, yeah, it's 50-50. It's like, no, dude, you sat there all day. You don't owe me anything. You know what I mean? That's not what I meant when I said, I mean, of the royalties that we get, we split. But if you go sell books on your own, you keep that. That's not. So that's not something to split.
I want to end with 3 questions, if you don't mind, and you can take this any direction you want. Question 1 is, let's just say for academic purposes, there was this chubby middle-aged loan officer who really wanted to write a post-apocalyptic novel and one day write more books. What's the tip that you would give an aspiring fiction author? What's your favorite movie and why? And what's your favorite book and why? So favorite movie, favorite book, and what advice would you give an aspiring author?
Those are really tough questions. I'm trying not to get myself in trouble here.
Hey, I mean, you can just tell the obvious one and say the Bible. That's an easy cop out, so you don't offend any of your authors.
Well, there's 66 books in the Bible, so you got to pick one of the.
Job, obviously Job.
Okay, so the advice that you got, which is, I usually try to talk people out of writing, and that sounds horrible because I make a living publishing writers, but you got to write for you. So my Little Billy the Kid book, I didn't think anybody would read that. My kids literally said, "Dad, nobody cares." That's how supportive children are. But because of that book, I'm working with Mr. Estevez. I was on national television twice. I was on History Channel. I was on Mysteries at the Museum on the Travel Channel. So it opens so many doors. And I sell, I don't know, I don't ever really push the book, but we have almost 50,000 followers on my book page, which, is great. I'm thankful for every one of them. And I probably make 1,000 or 1,500 a month in royalties off my book. So whatever that is. So it's 12, 15 grand a year. I mean, it's not insignificant. But I didn't write it for that. Right. So I would just say, if you're gonna write, just put your best foot forward, do the best job that you can, but write it for you, and write it to make it. One thing I've learned about really awesome, successful people, Barry Corbin, and I've met, in my corporate life, coming after dropping out of high school, I was literally dealing with billionaires. Okay. And, I'm a sales guy and I'm dealing with a billionaire guy. Everybody's trying to pitch the billionaire guy. And there's billionaire gals too, I guess. I'm not trying to be gender biased. However, do I need to hurry up?
No, we're good. We're good. I love this.
Yeah. So I was literally meeting these billionaire guys, and there's a concept called peer equality. And so if I'm going to negotiate with you, if you don't respect me, peer equality, then I can't really do a deal. You're going to take advantage of me, or you're going to, not take me seriously or whatever. That's why CEOs talk to CEOs. They call it top to top meetings. So yeah, you can make the introduction, but I want to talk to the top guy. Okay. So in order to successfully negotiate, which is trading value for value, right? You need peer equality. Well, how are you going to have peer equality with a billionaire? My $200 shoes, I have a Rolex just like you do. Well, you have like a freaking $250 million yacht. So my stupid I don't have a Rolex, by the way. My daughter bought me this. But my little $7,000 Rolex and my $200 shoes, I can't establish peer equality with you that way. Okay. So the way I did it, and I was highly successful at this, was I knew the restaurant business intimately. So to the point where I was cocky about it, right? So it's like, I don't care who you bring in to tell me how a McDonald's works, I can go toe to toe with you. Okay. So I knew that little slice of the business really, really well. So the first thing I would say is, know what you're writing about. NC Reed, Sean, they make sure that if they talk about rifle, they know about the rifle. If they talk about this area, Louis L'Amour used to do that. He would say, if I talk about a trail that goes up this mountain and through the woods over here, that's a real trail. So I would just say that, do the work, and be excellent at what you do, and you'll probably be happy with the outcome. So the people that I met at a high level also have high standards. So I would say have high standards for yourself. And if you'll allow me, I'll give you two quick examples.
Go for it.
Okay. We were invited, now I'm going to be name dropping, and I'm really a schmuck. Like I'm not, but I try to be the most thankful guy. I don't have to be the best looking or the best, but I can be the most thankful. Anybody can be the most thankful, right? We can compete at that.
Right.
I'm more thankful than you are. So I'm a very thankful guy, or try to be a very thankful guy. But at the time I was dealing with Luke Robitaille, LA Kings, Hall of Fame, Wayne Gretzky's wingman. And he invited me to Sundance Film Festival. So my wife and I fly out to Sundance Film Festival in Park City, and he has this celebrity hockey tournament that he does. And Mattis Yahoo, the rapper, Orthodox Jewish rapper. So I met him, and we go to this club and all this crazy stuff. And I'm meeting the Old Spice guy who says, "I'm the man your man wants to smell like." His name's Isaiah Mustafa, freaking awesome guy. So like I'm meeting all these guys, and because I'm with Luke, they're all texting me and stuff. And hey, we're going to this bowling alley after. Do you want to go? So it was crazy. So I got to do a lot of really cool things. So we're outside this. I just want to set the context because there's all these celebrities. And my wife, Matthew Perry was there from Friends. So my wife is like, oh, there's this guy. And half the people, I don't know who they are, right? But this young guy, he was in some show. I don't remember the show. But she's like, I want to get a picture with him. So I'm like, buddy, can my wife get a picture with you? He's like, yeah. So we're talking. He's like, oh, so you're friends with Luke, whatever. I was like, oh, friends. I don't know. Doing business with him. So he invited me. So we're like talking, whatever. And I go to take a picture, and he's in the middle of a sentence, and he stops. And he's like, like frozen, like whatever. And I'm like, I actually like, it was so incongruous with our conversation and the vibe and whatever. When he froze or whatever, I was like, are you okay? And he didn't move because I had the camera up. He wouldn't move until I put the camera down. And he's like, dude, take the picture. And I was like, you don't want a bad picture of yourself. Even if it's some fan, you don't want a bad picture of yourself. He's a freaking professional. That's his image. He doesn't want a bad picture. And that little thing, like, I don't care if you take a bad picture of me. You got a million bad angles of me, whatever. But this guy's an actor. He's a young heartthrob, whatever. And he literally noticed the little detail. When we're filming on Mysteries of the Museum, I'd be talking to Don Wildman, who's the host, who's awesome, by the way. and he'd stop in the middle of a sentence, and he'd go, airplane. Airplane? Sure enough, background noise. And I'd say, really? And he'd go, yep. And he'd have to wait. But I didn't even pick it up. So, and then talking to Mr. Estevez, the standards of quality are at another level. Hockey, these guys, they have routine. They have it's just the detail of how they do things. Like, I may just say, my stick's not really taped right. Screw it. I'll just go perfection. And then they got 5 more sticks lined up. They have a backup plan. They got, what I mean? Everything is buttoned up. So I would just say that, and I know it's a really long-winded answer. But there's a difference between the American Hockey League and the NHL, right? Big difference. Like, you think, well, they're pro. They just one step away from getting called up. I've been on the ice with both. It's unbelievable. Like, literally, when they take slap shots in the NHL, it's sounds like a rifle when you're on the on the ice. It's
right.
Crazy. And so it's amazing what human beings can accomplish when they dedicate themselves to be really, really good at anything. And I don't know if I'm great at publishing. I was really good in restaurants. I was really good at doing restaurant deals. I don't know if I'm as good at anything else. Actually, that's probably the thing I'm best at in the world, but it's not what I like to do the most. So anyway, my advice to you is to just do it for you, be as excellent as you can possibly be at it, and then just, don't really read reviews. You keep writing. Like, if you're going to write, you just got to keep writing. Guys will say, my book isn't selling as much as I want. What should I do? You should write the next one. Yeah, because you're going to get better and take feedback. At some point, you might want to give up. Right. If you've written 10 books and they're not selling, God's telling you he has a different plan for your life.
Right.
Unless you're just doing it for fun. But look, I'm in business, so my job is to sell books. So I can't just do this for fun. People depend on us to sell books. So, if I had that attitude, I would fire me. I'm just having fun. Gee willikers, we just want everybody to be published. It's like, no, you need to write something that the public wants to read, or else, talk to a vanity press. I don't want to talk to you. So anyway, that sounds cold, but it's like Simon Cowell on the
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. I mean, because, you can achieve your dreams. Well, maybe your dreams are messed up. Maybe God's telling you that's I wanted to be a Baptist preacher. That's not what he had for me. And the way I grew up, it makes sense now. Right. I'm not the Baptist preacher type. I'm conservative and all that, but hockey chaplain is way more up my alley.
Perfect. And then
I can drop the glove.
I know you're going to dodge the question again, but favorite book, favorite movie?
Oh boy, that's tough. Many of the books we publish, I've never read.
Makes sense.
So there's literally books that have sold like crazy. My favorite movie, it's called The Professional.
Amazing movie.
Thank you.
I have an interesting and inappropriate story from The Professional. So The Professional came out. It failed miserably in theaters because nobody knew who the French actor Jean, whatever his name is. So it came out, and then it created like a cult following in the late 90s. And I remember one of the guys in my unit in the Army had it on videotape, and we watched that movie over and over and over again. And Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman is like 11 years old in that movie. And in the French version, or in the book, it's much more awkward. But in the American version, she's just an orphan girl who the professional, the assassin, takes in.
That's the version I like, for the record.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. I didn't even know the French version existed.
I remember my buddy Edwin Blevins in the Army. I'll never forget this guy. He walks in and he catches the movie out of the corner of his eye, and he's like, that girl's going to be hot when she grows up. And I'm like, hey, creeper. She's like a teenager. Yeah. And sure enough, 8 years later, she comes out in Return, or the reboot of the Star Wars movies. Yeah. And she's absolutely gorgeous. I'm like, oh, Edwin Blevins was right, man. But I love every scene in that movie. If nobody's watched The Professional, which was called Leon in France. Yeah. It's like the precursor to John Wick. It's a more cerebral version of John Wick, and it's amazing.
So the mental process of and The Bodyguard has it too, to a degree, right? Where Kevin Costner,
Yep.
where you kind of isolate yourself from emotion and just kind of be single focused on your goal. And that kind of focus and it's just really interesting, right? And then also how, the guy that watches his money, nobody's gonna, hurt Fat Tony or whatever his name was. Like, just the whole thing I thought was brilliant, as kind of a piece of cinema.
And a lot of people don't remember Gary Oldman plays the really creepy drug dealer bad guy.
Yeah.
And Gary Oldman is just the best in America at playing the creepy guy.
Yeah. No, I think that was a really great movie. There's a lot of, but that would probably be my favorite, to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever told anybody that. And then books, man, I don't know. I read a lot of Louis L'Amour. I think this is going to sound dumb because it probably isn't my favorite book, but the one that comes to mind. Well, how about my least favorite book?
All right, cool. And then give me the one that you came to mind, even if it's in like your top 10,
top
20.
It was Flint by Louis L'Amour.
I've never read it.
Another Hitman. I like Hitman books, Hitman movies. No, but Flint by Louis L'Amour. This kid is an orphan and he's out in the street. Literally, he's been abandoned. And this guy who's a hitman, he's a dry gulcher, sees him, picks him up, travels with him, whatever. Finally says, sends him to school and says, when he gets to a certain grade, like it's like 6th grade or whatever, he gets a note with some money in it and says, I've done as much as I can for you. If you ever want to meet up, come see me here. So he goes and meets the guy and he gets killed in a bar. And so they basically grab his arms. He's playing poker. So they grab he's like, whatever, 14 or so. And he's sitting in the corner and Flint is playing cards and they grab him and fill him full of lead. And then they think, they forgot about the kid. And the kid jumps up and smokes them all and says he was my friend. And then the kid disappears. Well, the kid becomes this big business guy and then finds out he's got cancer. So he goes back to where he came from, not to ruin the book for you guys, but he goes back to where they came from to die. Basically, he goes to this hideout and they had turned some horses loose with this guy's brand on it, the assassin's brand. So he rides one into town. And it's a long story, but they're like, wait, we thought Flint was dead. This guy's too young to be Flint, whatever. So he gets embroiled in this big thing and he just doesn't give a damn because he's going to die. Well, come to find out, he's not going to die. He had an ulcer, not cancer. And he had some quack doctor in New York that told him he was going to die. So then he finds out.
Louis L'Amour also wrote Hondo. I'm just looking this up right now. Amazing.
Yeah,
book.
Louis L'Amour is the best. So anyway, there's this scene where he says, I'm the kid at the crossing. And they're like, holy shit, you're the kid at the crossing. Because it's like this legend. So again, a really dynamic piece of literature to me. I mean, I'm kind of a redneck ignoramus. But, I think it's a great storytelling. And there's certainly more technical books and certainly more,
of course,
other books. But the worst book. So one of my mentors was this guy, Arthur Taylor, who is a member of the Council for Foreign Relations. He was on Nixon's enemies list. He was the president of CBS back when they owned the New York Yankees and the all that. And he told me to read Once an Eagle by Myra. And it's like a 600-page thick book. And I read the whole book. And he's like, after you read it, we're going to have coffee. And it's this young idealistic military guy who basically, wants to save the world, God and country, whatever, and just gets hosed. Like his whole career, he has like this West Point political appointee guy who's like outranks him and treats him like garbage, and none of the sacrifices he's made for his life and friends and country matter. And he just basically ends up dead on an autopsy table. And the military doctors doing the autopsy go, holy cow, look at all the scars on this guy. I bet he could tell some stories. That's the end of the freaking book. And the whole point of the book is that life is meaningless and that, just give up, You know what that reminds me of is All Quiet on the Western Front. It's like, is it? I've never read it.
You've never read it? Okay, I'm going to ruin it for you. I'm going to ruin it for you. So it's the best depiction of World War I, just trench warfare, how hard it is. And the book gets its title because at the last passage of the book, the soldier who you've been following through all this catastrophe kind of sticks his head up to peer over the trench, catches one in the head, and dies on a surprisingly quiet day on the Western Front. And it's like, what?
So just
What?
random,
What?
yeah, meaningless, yeah.
Yeah, life is meaningless. You're going to die in the most strange way after encountering all this horrific, glory and tragedy. And you're like, holy fuck, that's the end of the book. Like you're getting, as you're reading the book, I read it as a young man, you're getting to the last couple of pages and you're like, all right, well, where's the part where he goes home a hero? Like they're going to really dial this down in like 2 pages and give us the synopsis of how he went home a war hero and, he found his purpose in life and then boom, dead on a generally quiet day. I think it's on a generally quiet day on the Western Front, or, he just gets whacked by a stray bullet. And it's brutal. And you're just like, oh, so there's no
good
meaning
about it, right?
Yeah, there's like no meaning to life. Great.
I would say, other than the Bible, the best nonfiction book I would say is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. If you've never read that, it's William Shirer. I think everybody in the world should read it at least once. Horrible. I mean, the stuff that this guy was a journalist in Nazi Germany before Hitler rose and during the war and all that stuff. And he did a ton of research, and it's a super interesting book. It's pretty horrific in parts, but very objective. I think I haven't read it in a long time. When I read it years ago, I thought it was very objective and very good. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, man. I wish I had time to.
I know my
reminds me of the Twilight Zone, where the guy just wants to read, and the world ends,
and his glasses break. Oh, that's the best. I'd love the Twilight Zone so much.
What's up with us? These fatalistic endings,
Okay, hold on. The longest audiobook that I've ever listened to was about 35 hours, and it was also a military history, which is about 3.5 times longer than your normal nonfiction, and about 4 or 5 times longer than about 4 or 5 times longer than your normal nonfiction, about 3 times longer than your normal fiction. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich on audio is 57 hours and 11 minutes.
Yeah. Wow.
That is a beast of a book.
It's a hell of a book. It's a big, thick, yeah.
I'm doing
an audio book.
I'm doing it now. That's going to be my next read.
I think you'll like it, man. It's it's vintage, but it's really, really good. Books are fun, man. Of course, I'm kind of a nerd, I guess.
No,
hockey guys would make fun of me.
I love it, man. Your story. I mean, just the trajectory of your life. This is, it's so funny. This conversation is why I do this podcast. Because about 4 years ago, I'm sitting at a cigar lounge smoking a cigar, and I had the most epic 3-hour conversation with a guy who I had never met and I will never see again. And the only reason I got access to him, because he was like the chief technical officer, I won't say what company, but he was the chief technical officer for a massive tech company, like Fortune 500 company. I would never have access to this guy in any other setting, except for we happened to end up in a cigar lounge together. We talked for 3 hours, and I'm like, the fact that conversation was not recorded, because we went into technology and AI and politics, I was like, it's a tragedy to the human world or to my kids that they didn't get a recording of that conversation. I'm like, Chris, we're starting a podcast. I'll never make any money doing it, but like, these are the kind of conversations, the trajectory of people's lives that I just want to have all the time. So Dan, thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for doing it, buddy. And I'm humbled because I don't think I'm that interesting, but hopefully somebody enjoyed a little piece of it. It's great to meet you, and I'm glad you're doing it. And you never know, you might make a bunch of money at it.
We'll see. Thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
Cool.
See you.